Hello, my name is Shawn. I'm here to talk to you about my first car, and this is the Island Drive collection. So behind me is my actual first car. I was approximately 14, 15 years old, and my dad acquired this car for me. He found it on in a farmer's field. Basically what happened is he was taking his brand new dog to get trained to be like a bird dog. And driving up wherever he was driving, he would go past this farmer's field, and in this field was this car rotting away, basically. When we found it, it was all painted in white. It had many layers of white paint. It was very, very thick white paint on there. And it had Arizona plates, and that's basically all we know of where it came from. Somewhere in Arizona, and it was painted white. So after driving by it a few times, realizing that I needed a car eventually when I was old enough, he decided to pick it up, and that's where the story begins, really. After a while, I didn't really drive it too much in its original state. Maybe a couple months, whatever it was. And then I would assume it was probably the winter. Being in Wisconsin, you're not driving any car in any condition like this in the winter. It just doesn't work so well for you. But it was sent off to get some work done. And well, my dad is a big car guy to begin with. He's been around cars and involved in that kind of activity for basically his entire life. So he wanted to make the car nice and safe because he knew that what type of car that was, and being my first car, and how he was when he was younger and how I would most likely be when I started driving. He wanted to focus on safety and function of the car as well. There is a roll cage in there and actually a 4-point harness system. So where it began, it had a 351. I believe it was a Windsor. That was pulled out of there because it was I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. I know that the original engine was a lead burning engine. So in the 90s when we got this, I don't know how available that was. I'm sure you can get additives. I'm sure you can still get additives, but it was more sensible to get a unleaded burning engine in there. So that original engine, I don't know if it was original to the car, that's the engine that was in it, was pulled. This one is now in there. This engine actually came from a different Mustang that my dad had, which was actually my brother's first car, which we'll talk about later. So now this is a 351 Cleveland 4-valve. It's been mildly worked on. It's bored 30 over. It's got an Edelbrock intake, Holley carburetor, competition camshaft. It's been I think it was changed to an automatic for whatever reason. Most of the cars that my dad dealt with have been changed to automatic. I don't know why. One of the goals with this thing in the future is to change it back to a manual transmission car. But it is currently a 3-speed automatic with a shift kit in it. It's got a Detroit locker rear end, 373 gears, I'm assuming. It's got newer kind of quasi-race seats in there. They're more comfortable than a race seat. They're not, I don't even know what brand they are. They're just something that was put in there. And yeah, this car, after going through those changes, is the car I drove to high school for 2 years, every day. I would drive approximately, it's something like 30 or 40 miles from where we lived out to Milwaukee, where I went to school. And I was stuck in the morning traffic every day. People looking at this young punk kid, most likely with a backwards hat on the way to school, stuck in traffic. And they're like, what what is going on? Because, you know, it looked like this in traffic every day. And, you know, there were a lot of looks. A lot of good looks, a lot of not so good looks. I get a lot of flack because it's purple. To the best of my knowledge, Mustangs were not made purple back then. And you know, people see it out and about and they're like, why is that purple? Why not? I thought it was a fantastic color. And, you know, when you see it in the light and out driving around, it is a head turner just because of the purple itself. The original intent, besides being my first car, was something for my family and just all of us, my mom, my dad, my brother, and I, to be able to go to car shows. And like I said, you know, my dad is really into cars and has been for quite some time. But not only being a first car, being able to go and like have basically a family function and go to car shows and just experience all of that together. So that's kind of why he wanted to do what he did with it. Again, besides being able to drive it, but he wanted it to look nice and be nice so we could go and participate in those kind of activities. So like I touched on before, you know, one of the things that I want to do is, you know, change this back over to manual transmission. I do have a lot of plans that I would really love to do with this car because I'm never, ever going to get rid of this car. I've been offered lots of money, you know, back in the day. Well, lots of money to me. Maybe not lots of money to some people, but you know, I don't ever plan on getting rid of this car, and you know, I do plan on passing this down to my children as well. Kind of like how I have, you know, caretaker of some of my dad's cars. So, but you know, one of the things besides being a manual transmission, you know, I want to put a nice suspension system in there. I kind of want to make this into, basically, I'm using the term lightly, but like a race car for the street. I know people use that and they're like, that's a bad idea. But you know, something, if I ever wanted to, I could take it to the race track. I can autocross it, whatever. But it's not going to be the sole purpose for that. I'm going to drive it a lot like I do now, and maybe someday, you know, take it to the track. I want to be able to do it if I could. Right now, not a good idea. The way it's set up, it's kind of almost period correct for a muscle car back in the day. It's got really big back tires, skinny front tires, but the stance on this is not good for turning. So need to get different wheels and tires, different suspension, again, the transmission, but it needs to be proper to be able to do that. Someday, possibly, if things go well, maybe put a different engine in there, something maybe more modern. I don't know, you know, like a Coyote crate motor in there would be pretty cool, but I kind of like the way it is now. Maybe if I can get something similar to this or refurbish this, but there are many plans in the future, just time and money like anything else. So currently, right now, with this car and you know, the other cars that we do, you know, there's tons of Cars and Coffees that happen in the summer here and car shows. We really enjoy my family, my wife and kids, and we even take my mom out sometimes. That, you know, we'll go for a ride on the weekend or whatever it is. Go to, you know, that custard place and get a burger and some fries and some custard, or take it to the Cars and Coffee when we can. And, again, just like the tradition my dad started with us, that this is, you know, it's a family event. We'll take one or two cars, pile everybody in one, or you know, have my wife drive another one. We'll take two, and same kind of thing. We'll do like the 60s muscle car, or we'll do the 50s hot rods, or well, it depends on where we're going and what we're doing.